subsurface compaction more than surface compaction. So when you're doing soil sampling in the top 6 inches or the top 8 inches, you may see a little bit more compaction that you're going to work up with your tillage anyway. Where alfalfa shines is in that 12, 15, 18 inch range, where normally we can't get unless we're putting on big shanks and ripping ground and that sort of stuff. That's where we see alfalfa decompacted. When there is a problem, like when you've got plow pan, when you've got, like, if I go out with my penetrometer and I'm always getting 300 PSI all over the field, I've seen the alfalfa get it to 200, you know, which is quite a bit better for regrowth, that sort of thing. But in the top 3 or 6 inches, they could be very, very similar. The top 3 or 6 inches where we see the compaction reduction is in something like Sudan grass. Sudan grass has a much more fibrous, dense root system, and it's going to have more compaction fighting in that top layer of soil.
That might be what's missing, and something extra in that mix with fine, shallow roots.
Yeah, and that's where, like, I know there's a couple growers up west that after potatoes, they grow Sudan grass, underseeded alfalfa. The Sudan grass does a good job, and they mow it twice that year. Nice big root system, nice big great looking crop. And then the alfalfa comes the next year, and then they get the subsurface compaction of that as well as the nitrogen, and then they're back into potatoes.
It's a good approach.
And the farm, one of the farms that I've talked to about that, I've talked about that rotation, that's their staple rotation they moved to now. They're growing chipstock, and they have cut their nitrogen rate by 30 to 40% over what they used to use by incorporating the alfalfa, and they have increased their yields. So they're growing more potatoes off the same acres.
To Paul's question and your queries, Ryan, and by no means am I any guru on anything, but the last 2 summers have been very difficult for growers, I think, and certainly in my yard, to say, this management practice that I've shifted to is showing me dividends. Because you can't get dividends that are apparent and overwhelming and make you feel good when your crop's dying because of drought, right?
100%.
So, you know, maybe if we could transport back 3 years and you had 21, 22, and 23, and you know you've changed some practices and you're seeing some benefits, probably people could think.
And that's 100% dang on. Same in all my research trials. All my research trials this year
sucked.
Yeah. Well, the trials didn't suck. The results sucked.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, like, you know, my average yield across all my research trials is about 250 to 260 hundredweight. Normally, it's over 300. You know, so it's just, you know, this year, and drought masks differences in trials, no matter what it is. The only trials this year that wouldn't mask the difference was anything that was around like manure or heavy organic matter improvement or something like that. That probably would show the difference this year, but a lot of other trials are going to mask it in a dry year. So that's why you do have to think back to 21, 22, 23 when we had better years, and what do you see? And hopefully better years coming ahead of us, right?
As far as alfalfa with grasses, is timothy the right grass, or?
It depends a little bit. So if you're going to be like a mow it twice and done, and you're not going to sell any hay or anything like that, timothy is as good as any. If you're going to sell hay off of it and you want the grass to be timed at the same time as the alfalfa for maturity, and you want to have a good regrowth of grass the next time, I would sub out some of the timothy for like orchard grass or meadow fescue. Smooth brome grass, that sort of meadow brome grass, that sort of stuff. Some of those crops, they may not be as much bulk on the first, but they'll be more on the second. So like at home, I usually we don't use as much timothy as we used to. We still have a bit of timothy, and then I'll make sure I have some orchard grass, some brome. We use brome. Not everybody likes brome. In a short rotation, I probably wouldn't use as much brome. More, you know, meadow fescue, tall fescue, those sorts of things, because they'll regrow better on the second and third
And when the calves are eating fescue, you can actually see them smiling a little bit.
Corners of their mouths are turned up.
And I would stay away from Kentucky bluegrass and some of that sort of stuff in short rotations. Some mixes have that in it. If you're in a short rotation, I would probably stay away from it. This can be a little bit hard to kill, especially in dry conditions. Any other questions? All right, on to the next slide, please. Next one, please. So, last two things to leave you with before we leave. We did a trial this year with Atlantic Agritech with Evan McDonald, and we're interested in Colorado potato beetle insecticide resistance. We've been doing some survey work the last few years, and there is definitely insecticide issues with certain classes of insecticides in terms of losing efficacy. So we're seeing that on our in-furrows, like the Actera and the Titan. We're getting, what, 50, 60 days of control out of it for the most part, and then it starts to wear off and we start to get encroachment from the side and that sort of thing, and now we're having to do 1 or 2 or more sprays. At the same time, some of the foliars we're also seeing some level of resistance on. Not as much, but some. Other parts of Canada, out west, Manitoba, the only thing they don't have resistance to yet is Symegra, and everything else they've got some level of resistance to. So we're in a little better situation than others, but we need to try and manage that, right? And we need to see where we're at today and how do we manage it. I picked 5 products for our trial just to try and do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison on how they work and how they work when we didn't use any in-furrow neonic. We didn't use any CP treatment for this. So I was reliably informed last night that this number isn't 50, it's actually 40. There was a price drop on that one. So we put that in, they're all, in the neighborhood on where they are for price. Symegra is newer, it's group 30. Manecto Pro, Viego, and Coragen all are group 28, but Manecto Pro also has abamectin in it, which is a group 6. It's the only group 6 that we have to use. And then Delegate is group 5. And Delegate is the same group as Entrust, which is the organic one that some people have used. And there are others within those categories as well, right? Not the only products that are out there, but we tried to pick representative ones that we knew people were using to see what they look like. We put these into rotations, so what we did is we had a plot trial. We have an untreated check with no insecticide. On the first treatment, we have 2 with Symegra, 2 with Viego, and then 1 each with Manecto Pro, Coragen, and Delegate. And then on the second application, so the first application was the 7th of July, second application was the 4th of August. And then what we used the next time was just not the same group as the one was the first time. So if we used group 28 the first time, we used a different group the next time. And then those are the total dollars per acre of the combination. The 2 with Manecto Pro bring those down to 84 instead of 94. So that's percent defoliation. So that's the amount of biomass that's gone from the potato leaves in those plots. The top one, of course, is the check, and you can see we get up to 85, 90% defoliation by August. They've chewed those down to sticks. There's not much left. All of them did pretty well, and very similar amount in terms of reducing that population early. And by the 21st of June, which is we're starting to get towards, tuber initiation and stuff here, right? Or a little bit past tuber initiation, or more in early bulking by then, when it starts leaving the factory. We're all at, less than 5% defoliation, so they're all about similar. Now, then we see a bit of an inflection point. You see the Delegate, that's the light blue one. It wears off a little faster. So it just doesn't have the staying power. It was really good at the knockdown, it just didn't quite have the staying power of the other ones. So it starts to go back up a bit. The other ones are all basically the same. They're all statistically the same. You see the Manecto Pro is the solid orange one. That one seems a little bit higher. It's statistically the same, and also a couple of the Manecto Pro plots happen to be next to the untreated plots, so they probably got a little extra side chewing a little more early encroachment than the others. It's always hard to do this type of trial, even in a plot trial, even with randomization, just based on where the plots go, right? Next one. That's larvae per plant. So you can see we start with big numbers at the start. They all bring them down really fast. So the Symegra and the Delegate bring them down to 0 in 2 days, like right away. The Menecto Pro, the Coragen, and the Viago bring them down to 0 a couple more days after that. And then they almost all stay around 0 except for Delegate. And you get these small little bumps. They're not big, you know, they're only going up to 3 or 4 larvae per plant, but it's a little more chewing. And that's probably why we saw that difference in defoliation in the other one. And then this is NDVI. So NDVI is a measurement that was done by drone by Evan that measures the basically crop health, right? So the health of the canopy and the percent green of the canopy. So you can see the untreated check over here, really low, way lower than everything else. Almost all the treatments are almost all exactly the same, with the exception of the Delegate, the one that was Delegate first. And you can see it's just a little bit lower, and that's because there was just that little bit more defoliation. But where we swapped the Delegate and the Symegra, and went Symegra first, Delegate second, it's the same as the rest of them. So next slide. So the take-home message here is that in this trial, Symegra, Viago, Coragen, and Menecto all performed pretty similarly on the first spray. They all did a pretty good job at knocking down the beetles. The Delegate was good at first and then wore off a little earlier than the others. So I would say my inference from that would be that I probably wouldn't rely on Delegate for being my first spray, but I think it might have use as a second spray if you're looking for something to rotate chemistries and you're looking for something to come in and mop up at the end. But for something that's going to give you more residual control, I'd go with more of that first group, the 28s and the 30. The most costly, just go back there please. The most effective was the Viago Delegate in this trial. Rotate chemistries. So who had to spray 2 times or more for beetles this year? Okay, good. Only 1 or 2. Last year, or up west yesterday, it was like everybody in the room. So there's a little more higher beetle population and a little more resistance up west than there is down here. So you guys are a little more fortunate. But if you are going 2 sprays in a year, do not use the same chemistry twice in a row, and do not use from the same family. So don't go Viago and then Coragen, or don't go Menecto and then
Pay attention
Coragen.
to your number.
Yeah, pay attention to the number that's on the group number that's on the label, okay? Try and mix those up. And even if you're getting into places where you've got fields that you know are bad, or worse than other fields, and where we may be getting into resistance, try not to use the same first insecticide this year that you use the next time. So you got adjoining fields, and one's potatoes this year and one's potatoes next year. That's the same population that's just going between fields, right? They're coming from the hedgerow and going on the other side. They're the same beetles. They're all clones of each other. So you need to make sure, like if you go Symegra first this year, maybe don't go Symegra first next year. Maybe go Menecto or Viago or something the next year. Mix it up. Because they all seem so far, generally, to work similarly. Now, if you have used one of these chemicals and it's not working great for you, that's important to know because maybe you're seeing a resistance that other people aren't. But so far, the group 28s and the group 30s, generally we're not seeing much resistance to in PEI. The group 5s, we are starting to see resistance to. So I would just swap up the chemistries. Don't throw out the Delegate or the other group 5s. They might have value as a mop-up at the end. Just rotate.
It's really important.
Yeah, because they're only developing a new chemistry for, or a new product for potato beetle about every 15 years. And they seem to go resistant about half that time. So we need to keep as many tools in the toolbox as we can. We don't want to be like Manitoba, where we got one product that works and everything else doesn't work. So then they're going to overuse that product, and then that product's going to have insecticide resistance. So Alternaria, same sort of deal. Well, in 2024 and 2025, we took samples across the province. Humna and I took a bunch of samples. Thanks for those that either submitted them or let us take samples. And we submitted them, we worked with Rick at AFC and Julie at North Dakota State to try and analyze them for signs of fungicide resistance. And by doing that, we're looking for mutations in the genome, and mutations in the genome that are associated with decreased efficacy of the products. 2024 samples are done. 2025 samples are hopefully going to get done the next month or so. The key finding so far is almost everything that we sent away is not early blight. It's almost all brown spot. And even more surprisingly, a bunch of it looks like brown spot, or looks and like it's kind of like brown spot. Even under the microscope, they look like brown spot. But when they do the analysis, they're actually a different species than Alternaria alternata, which is the main one we usually use. What we don't know is whether these new similar but different species, whether they have the same efficacy on the products, whether my theory is that some of them actually, under the microscope they look more like brown spot, but their symptoms look more like early blight, and that may be why we're looking at fields, we're looking at samples, like, well, that's definitely early blight, and then we send it into the lab and like, there's no early blight here. And that's frustrating, but it's important to know. And these small spored alternarias, like alternata and the ones that we normally call brown spot, they respond differently to chemistry than the early blight, than Solanite does. And also, in the 2024 samples, about a third of the samples that we sent in had at least one mutation that's associated with fungicide resistance, and some of them had 2 and 3 mutations. And some of those mutations have never been seen before by NDSU. So we're going to do a paper on it. We don't know the degree of how resistant or not resistant those are. That will take time over years to figure out. Long story short is, next slide, it comes down to resistance again. Rotate your chemistries. Don't get too reliant on one product or one family of products. And make sure you're using a fungicide that's labeled for both early blight and brown spot. All of these products are labeled for both. The ones at the bottom, Headline, Quash, Canthus, Lance, Circatus, Scala, those are labeled just for early blight. Okay? And we're not seeing much early blight here, so I wouldn't rely as much on those. Bravo and Mancozeb, your regular, late blight management, they don't do a ton for early blight either in brown spot. They do a little if your infection level is really low and it's not a susceptible variety, okay, you might be able to get away with it. But if you're growing a susceptible variety, you're growing Targies, you're growing Rangers, you're growing Satinas, you're growing any of those varieties, Dakota Russets, you're going to want to make sure you have at least 1 or 2 of these sprays on before row closure. And so you got group 3, group 7, and group 9. Group 11's here too, but azoxystrobin and pyraclostrobin don't do much on Alternaria. They're in there for other things. So, no, please go back. So, make sure you are alternating. So if you're going with Luna the first time, go with Sevia the next time. Or if you're going with Quadris Top the first time, go with something with a 7 the next time. Mix up your mixes.
Which ones of those would also control white mold?
Mirvis Duo control white mold.
Luna, Tranquility.
And Luna does a bit. I don't think Veltima does. Yeah, don't think Veltima does.
It's a group 7.
The question we had yesterday, I had a question about one grower had Allegro in their mix for early blight and brown spot. Allegro is not labeled for either. So Allegro is on for late blight and it's on for white mold, but it is not on for either of these 2 things. So bear that in mind as you're putting your program together as well. Any questions about that?
So the resistances that you're seeing are to which products?
Don't know that yet. That's work in progress. I'll know more once I get a full report. Yeah. But, just go back one more time, Hunter. They are starting to see Luna resistance out west, and where they have more early blight. And Luna's getting used a lot here, and it's getting used back to back in some cases, and also on fields that are also using vellum, and fluopyram is vellum. So you're getting too much use of the same chemical, and that's going to build resistance. So the recommendation on the label is basically do not use Luna more than twice in a season, and my recommendation would be do not use it more than twice a season, and do not use it back to back. Yeah. See if we can preserve these tools as long as we can. Anything else? All right, lastly, just housekeeping stuff. Rotational grazing, we're working on this through Living Labs. I don't have a whole lot to share with you yet. Most of the work we've done so far has been 1 year of grazing before potatoes versus no grazing. And in most of those cases, not unsurprisingly, we haven't seen much difference in yield or on soil health because it's 1 year. I have a few trials coming up. Some of those fields that were already grazed are going back into grazing, and it'll be potatoes again in the next year or two. And then hopefully over a couple of rotations, we'll see a difference. Also, I have two other trials here. One in West Prince that was 2 years grazed versus not grazed that's going into potatoes this year. And then I have one in Queens County out in Kingston that was 3 years grazed versus not grazed going into potatoes this year. In that 3-year grazing one, I am starting to see some differences in the soil health metrics where they graze versus not grazed, like little ones. So we're interested to see what the soil samples say this year, interested to see if we see any difference in the crop. If you're interested in trying grazing on the fields, in your fields, when I did the survey and asked if you had an interest in grazing, way more people said that they were maybe or definitely interested and said that they weren't. So if this is something you're interested in, and you're interested in partnering with a beef producer, or you want to spend a bunch of money and buy a bunch of beef cows and do it yourself, there is off-calf funding to help with that. Riley will talk to you about that. There is, take advantage of it while it's still there. That can help with the watering, and that can help with the fencing, that sort of stuff. There's also, this year, we had one farm that did those E-Shepherd collars. So Mooney's did that up west with a beef farmer from Vernon River. Next slide, Humna, please. That's what they look like. So they look like the St. Bernards with the kegs under their chins.
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. But those are solar powered, and basically what they do is, so you draw a fence on an app on your phone, and they say the cows are going to stay within these 2 acres today. And then if the cow goes to the edge of that, and it buzzes first, and then they back up, and then the next time it buzzes and maybe gives them a little bit of a shock, or not really a shock, but like a,
vibration.
Yeah, something. And they generally, 95% of the time, they obey that. And the only really escapes that Chad had last year was the ones where either it broke or it ran out of juice and disconnected. So he was happy with how they worked. And then all they needed around the perimeter, this is a 120-acre field, all they needed was a 1 strand of barbed wire around the whole thing. And then what he did for water, he just had this water tank set up with watering stations on a wagon, and they just moved it every 2 days. So it was parked between 2 paddocks, paddocks every day. So they go to the first one, and then they can access the water. Then they move to the next one, and they can still access the water. And then after the second day, he's got to pull the trailer ahead, and then it goes for 2 more days. If you did it on a certain field, depending on how you set it up, if you put it in the corner, you might be able to get, 4 days out of it, depending on your labor and all that sort of stuff. And he just filled that with the water tanker, that you'd be filling for the sprayer, So, if you're interested in that, or somebody's interested in that, that's an option to look at. Does anybody else have any other questions? Any other comments? Please know that if you're not comfortable talking in here, or you have something comes to you later, or something comes to you on the ride home, just pick up the phones, give me a call, send me an email, send me a text, come visit me at the office, ask me to come visit you. I'm happy to do all those things. So, yeah, I want your feedback. This is your guys' program. This is your guys' agronomy initiative. I want you, the topics that you're interested in. I want the speakers that you want to hear from. I want to get that feedback, right? It's your program. I'm working for you. I'm trying to bring information to you that you need. If there's something I'm spending time on, you said, I don't give two shits about that. Like, it doesn't impact us and it's not going to move the needle. Like, I want to know that too, okay? Because we don't need to spend time and money. I only got so many hours in the day. There's stuff we can, if there's stuff that you want us to put more time in. Next slide. We're only doing 2 winter workshops this winter. I'm kind of pushing the boat out on the second one a little bit. I'm bringing Dr. Stallam in from the UK. Some of you will have seen him. He was here, I'm going to say, 2018 for Potato Expo. He is one of the most highly recognized potato agronomists / researchers in the United Kingdom. He straddles the world between, you know, research papers and scientific stuff and like plot scale stuff, but he also was always very good at speaking to producers, and now he retired from Cambridge University Farm and NIAB over there, and now he does private agronomy with producers. So he's mostly going to talk about bruise reduction and potato handling and tillage and that sort of stuff, but he's also going to talk about irrigation and irrigation scheduling. Irrigation scheduling is one of his fortes. He just made his own program on irrigation scheduling, so we can talk to you about a little bit about that. And the farms he deals with are in Norfolk and Suffolk, in the southeast of the UK, and their soil type is very similar to here. A lot of sandy loam soils, that sort of thing. A lot of 3- and 4-year rotations. Potato Expo coming up, end of February. I'll have more to say in agronomy updates soon about the speakers. Speakers are confirmed now, they're on the website. I think we have some really good ones. We have Tyler Heppel coming from BC. If any of you have ever heard of Potato Ty, he has 800,000 followers on TikTok talking about growing potatoes in lower mainland BC. And he's quite a guy, and he's a good speaker. So he's coming to talk about potato marketing and talking to the public and stuff. We're going to talk about scab. We're going to talk about drones. Chad's going to talk about drones with Evan. We're talking about irrigation technology. We're talking about soil health. All the big topics we usually talk about. Week after next, I'm doing a webinar with Farmers for Climate Solutions on cover crops. If you felt I missed something today, or you want to ask more questions, or you want to hear from 2 other people that might know more than me, like Angela Strathoff from Guelph, or Darren Axton is a farmer out in Saskatchewan. It's just an 1.5-hour webinar. And if you register and can't do it that day, if you register, they'll give you the link to watch it later. So you can do that too. If it doesn't fit for you to do it in the middle of the day, but you want to watch in the evening or something, you can do that too. Anybody that's a CCA in here? Okay, no worries. Thank you to all those people. Same people I always thank. That's my contact information. That's it for today. Anything else for we examiners? All good, all done? All right. Thank you, everybody. It's great to see a great turnout. I appreciate your efforts to come, your time to come. It's nice doing this to a full room, and it's nice to, hopefully you get some value out of it. If you want to revisit any of this, I will make the slide deck available on the website, as well as Humna's been up there diligently recording it, so that'll also be available next week or sometime on the website as well. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Ryan.